Our last movie of the year 1930 is none other than the film Morocco, a pre-code romantic drama directed by Josef von Sternberg and starring Marlene Dietrich, Gary Cooper, and Adolphe Menjou. The film is set against the exotic backdrop of North Africa and tells the story of Amy Jolly, a disillusioned nightclub singer who arrives in Morocco looking for a fresh start. Her path crosses with that of Tom Brown, played by Gary Cooper, a disillusioned soldier in the French Foreign Legion, and the two of them embark on a rather heated romance. The film is notable for its lush cinematography, evocative of Sternberg's signature style, and for Dietrich's captivating performance, which includes a groundbreaking scene where she wears a tuxedo and kisses another woman. Morocco is also remembered for its exploration of themes such as love, desire, and the complexities of human relationships. The film's atmospheric visuals and haunting score complement the narrative, creating a poignant and enduring piece of cinema. Morocco earned several Academy Award nominations and solidified Marlene Dietrich's status as a major Hollywood player, also marking the beginning of a very long and very successful collaboration with her and Josef von Sternberg. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Cinema 100. But ladies and gentlemen, this is Morocco.
May I have this? Of course.
With our final movie of the year 1930, Will and I find ourselves in the desert sands of Morocco. That's right, the 1930, November 14th release date, Morocco. We find ourselves at a cabaret singer and a legionnaire fall in love, but their relationship is complicated by the results of his womanizing in the appearance of a rich man who wants her for himself. This is directed by Josef von Sternberg, distributed by, you know what, I missed that one. The runtime here is 92 minutes. This is starring Gary Cooper, who played Legionnaire Tom Brown, and Marlene Dietrich as Mademoiselle Amy Jolly. And, Will, before we hear from you, I want to say that I think another title to this movie could have been No Chemistry. No chemistry between Amy and Tom. No chemistry between Amy and Les Bessières. No chemistry between Caesar and his wife. Just no chemistry with anybody in this movie, and yet we're supposed to buy that everybody's in love, and we should be in love with this movie. So I don't want to get overly critical of the movie too far too yet. Just tell me your early impressions, maybe if you fill in the blank word, if you have it, for this movie and your experience. Tell me what your initial reactions were, Will.
Yeah, I was excited about the fill in the blank here because I had one right off the rip halfway through the movie. This movie, Morocco, is painful. It was so hard to watch. This is the worst movie we watched. That was my initial reaction. I mean, it's not even really close for me because even every movie we've watched so far we've found redeeming qualities for. This one doesn't have any. I didn't find one thing that I could latch onto. Even trying to think of big picture. This is Gary Cooper and Marlene Dietrich. These are two superstars, all timers on the list. Even researching Josef von Sternberg, I was like, this guy's a big name in Hollywood, but there's nothing here. I'm so shocked that this movie is liked by people.
Hey, going off of that, Will, you and I are 100% simpatico. I actually, for a minute there, when I was watching this, I said, I wonder if Will, and I apologize, I don't mean this as an insult, but there was a thought where I was like, I wonder if Will overthink this movie and find some of the aesthetics really good. I wonder if you'll think that this movie is okay. I never thought you were going to think it was great, but I thought it was okay. It took Hollywood 62 years to actually give this movie a preservation stamp of approval. In 1992, Hollywood decided that this movie needed to be preserved because it was aesthetically and culturally historical. That's not saying too much about the movie. That's just basically saying that this movie took place and they filmed it outdoors, and it's what Morocco looked like in 1930. So, yeah, I'm with you. Painful is a absolute dead-on word. I found this movie to be painful, and I do think there's a couple redeemable qualities, and I'll get into my first big one right now. I think this movie, the one question I had after watching it, Will, was, has this movie ever been remade? All right. In the 90 some years since this movie came out, has this movie ever been remade? And it hasn't. And maybe there's a reason for that. But I actually thought like the story structure, like the end scene where she's looking through the caravan of soldiers that are coming, I could see that being an impactful moment in a movie, right? Where she hasn't seen Tom Brown for a while and she's trying to find him and see what type of shape he's in. I could see that. I thought the story structure of the movie could work with a script that has a lot more like self-awareness, a lot more intent to it. This, I don't know what was being done here. Like, what do you think? What was the goal of this movie? Because I'm not sure if the goal of the movie is to tell a love story. I don't buy they're in love.
Yeah. Nope. I totally agree. I read a review. I've been sifting through reviews, just trying to like glom onto something that makes it make sense for me. Trying to like understand it a little bit better, because it either went over my head or it's terrible. And I'd like to give stuff the benefit of the doubt. But I read a review earlier that said, this is the only movie that's ever made me like the rich guy. And like he's the character that's actually redeemable here, which is just shocking, because you've got these two. You can see Marlene Dietrich's, like, she has a magnetism about her in some of the scenes, like especially the scene where she's looking for him, and even the last scene where she's compelled to walk out into the desert. But like, they don't use it enough. They don't capitalize on it, and it just it just felt like a waste of time.
A waste of time. It felt empty. I just scratching the surface trying to figure out like what I'm supposed to sink my teeth into. What a great review. The only movie where I've actually rooted for the rich guy. You're right. He is the character in the movie. Let's get this name, because I think we should, because I do think the gentleman that played Monsieur Le Bessiere was Adolphe Menjou. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I do think he acted fine. I thought he had a composure to him. There was a presence, so I actually do think that he might be the best part of the movie as far as character development. Right. A lot of holes in this movie. Just a couple things that spit out to me is like, these two are supposed to be being Tom and Amy. They're supposed to be, both driven to Morocco for different reasons, and maybe we're being too critical, but like, 60 years later, we're going to get more backstory, right? We're going to get more backstory as to why these two people are so broken the way that they are, right? I think a lot of the reason this movie doesn't work, to be honest with you, is our star, Gary Cooper. I found nothing about him that I liked. And I'm going to be honest with you, like his performance, I think is supposed to be almost playful. So I'll give you two names and you tell me what you think. I'm going to give you two, not necessarily modern day, but like, modern to us in our era in the last 30 years that I think kind of resembled a Gary Cooper in this movie. And that's Mel Gibson, early day Mel Gibson, right? Like I think the movie Maverick, where he's kind of like, kind of playful, confident, overly arrogant type. I think he could have played this a little bit better. And I think of like Harrison Ford, right? Early days Harrison Ford, kind of a smart ass. But Gary Cooper in this movie he is a womanizer. He's kind of sloppy with his performance, in my opinion. It's not really, there's nothing like smooth to it, right? Like that's my only thing I think I actually like about it. I didn't feel like he was smooth with his lines. It felt like every time someone would deliver a line, then there would be this beat, and then there would be a line given, and it was almost like someone was in a studio going, "Okay, your line is," and then they would repeat it, and then finally someone would say it. I don't know. What do you think about those two names? In comparison to Gary Cooper, and just what was your thoughts on Gary Cooper's performance? Is it lack of the screenplay, the script, and any direction from this director, or is Gary Cooper himself kind of to blame here too?
Yeah, no, I think there's some blame to go around for everybody, for sure. But like, I don't think, the I picked up on those pauses as well in between like the conversation pieces where there's like three sometimes it was like 7 or 8 seconds between like responses, and that's not on the actors. Like that's a direction, that's a choice the director's making or requesting of the actors. So I think there's a lot of blame here to be put on Sternberg. But Gary Cooper, like, there's just, I think the other part that we might be rubbing up against is his character's just slimy, right? Like there's just
Yes.
something off about the character, and I just don't know. I don't know what Gary Cooper could have done here to make it a good performance. But you're right. There is something Mel Gibson-y, like the "What Women Want" role, that kind of I can see some lineage there. So,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, dude, I'm with you. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's just because the character, because he's written slimy, and Gary's delivered. The only issue is that, like, when Gary walked on the film or on the screen, I was kind of hoping to have like this Humphrey Bogart, like this, Paul Newman, like this presence. I always like, I'm like, oh wow, I'm watching Gary Cooper. You know what I mean? But
yeah,
I'm kind of watching this tall, kind of gangly guy, and a lot of the shots in this movie, majority of the shots in this movie are wide shots, right? I do think that's another mistake by Josef von Sternberg, is that there's very few close-ups to like have the facial expressions sell us on any of the emotion that's being, supposed to be being relayed in this movie. And it's
yeah,
just a lot of white shots, a lot of white shots. And it's like a lot of times when Marlene and Gary were talking, or Tom and Amy, Gary would have his back to the camera and
mm,
he's talking, and you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm not even seeing his face, and like that's an issue. So I don't know. I maybe you're right. Maybe it's the character itself, but like there was something about Gary where I was like, okay, it's definitely because of the sliminess. Because right away he says, I think his first line is something about like, I'm gonna use these hands later, or I haven't done it yet. I don't know, something, and like right away you're thinking, okay, that's kind of creepy.
yeah. These I'm not doing anything with these fingers yet, or
Yeah.
something along those lines, because he's checking out the girl in the crowd.
Yeah, you're right. That's exactly what it was. Um, I'm going to read the plot. The plot to me, I think when I read the plot, I get excited because I think it's a movie that could work. Okay.
Hmm.
I'm just going to read this plot real quick. The Foreign Legion marches into Mogador with booze and women in mind, just as singer Amy Jolly arrives from Paris to work at Lo Tinto's Cabaret. That night, Legionnaire Tom Brown catches her catches her, I'm not sure what that word is, I typed it wrong, catches her seductively wearing a tuxedo and having a tuxedo clad act. Both bruised by their past lives, the two edge cautiously into a no strings relationship while being pursued by others. But Tom must leave on a mission. Is it too late for them? That sounds like there's a movie there, right?
Sure.
How far into the movie did it feel like it was either off rails or not coming back, or we were headed nowhere quick?
Yeah, somewhere between her performance and her when he meets her in the apartment, right? Because like there at in that like at the performance there is a little bit of chemistry there initially. Like you can see there's a mutual attraction. You can see that they're gonna probably execute their desires, that they're that mutual attraction is showing. And then you get to the apartment and it's just this weird forced cat and mouse game. Like, why not just jump right into it?
Yeah.
Like, why not? Why do we have to play this? We've already started the cat and mouse. You don't need to do it for another 10 minutes or whatever it was. And the way that it's done, I think, is the other issue. It's like they keep walking back and forth, and it's just like, it's like a production of a high school play, is what it feels like.
It
And
was a play. It was a
yeah,
play, right? Maybe it was based on a high school play.
could
Who
have been.
knows? We'll have to do some research. It's one of those adapted theater plays that was adapted to the screen. I think we've had more of those than we've had not. I don't want to just get on this podcast and be overly critical of the movie, but I do think we need to be fair, and I think that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Getting to the rich man real quick, just getting back to Adolphe, I found myself kind of, I liked him at first. I was like, oh, here we go again. Here's another movie that's going to give me the guy that's actually the good guy in the film, but yet it's trying to tell me he's the villain of the film, which they never fully did do, which is good. I thought that was actually, I don't want to say brilliant, but I think that was smart of them. Sure. But there was a moment in the movie where I was like, hey, dude, she don't like you. Like at some point, you know what I mean? Like at some point, like I think she rejects him like 3 or 4 times in this movie. So at some point it's like, okay, maybe I don't like you anymore. You know what I mean? But he won me back with the final line that he gives the engagement party, right? She convinces the table, or she convinces him before they go out there, that Tom, dead or alive, it's not going to persuade her to do anything else, right? She's not going to have any emotion for it. And then they hear the kind of the background music in the background of the company coming back, and it triggers her. Like I said, I think there's things of this movie that could work.
Sure.
And then, she goes running out, and I actually did enjoy the next like 5-6 minutes of this, because then he goes back, tells the table, I what can I say? I love her, I would do anything for her. And for better or worse, it was like, oh, he won me back. This is just a guy who's in love with her, knows she's not in love with him, is willing to, settle the rest of his life knowing that he's number 2. And he's like okay with that because he gets to be within her presence. Can you think of other? Go ahead.
I was just going to say, he's willing to drive her out into the desert to find her man and let her walk back.
Hey, I'll tell you what, if I'm driving a girl, my fiance, to the desert to find some other man, she definitely not walking or getting a ride back in a car. So she definitely walking somewhere. Have you seen this done in movies before? Because I have. There felt like there were some themes here before in some more modern movies. I just can't think of them off the top of my head. Where we've seen, a number 2 who we don't hate, right? Where the director actually makes good decisions and says, people are in love with 2 people at sometimes. And sometimes the guy that she probably should be with, she's just not passionate about, and she goes the other way. I mean, have you any movies come to mind that you've seen that are like this?
Not a direct correlation, but pretty close as Past Lives.
I thought the same thing.
Yeah. So Past Lives, is a pretty obvious comparison here because Celine Song does a great job of like letting Grace Lee, I can't remember the name of her character in the movie, but navigate that being in love with 2 people at the same time, like a little bit more practical love and a little bit more passionate love. But here, I hate making that comparison because Past Lives is such a good movie, and this one's not. But I think, like you were kind of saying, there is some redeemable. There's some qualities in this movie where you can see why they would have made it, and why it could have worked. And maybe that's the other part of the frustration, is they don't ever really give you any sort of explanation for the choices that are being made. Like, and the tagline's more descriptive than anything you get in the movie. Like, you get more about the 2 characters from the tagline than you do anything in the film. So
what do you know when we leave this hour-and-a-half movie? What do we know about Tom Brown?
He probably has some sort of venereal disease. That's the only thing we know.
Yep. I wish I could change my background on the fly. Oh, that's funny. Yeah, we don't know anything other than he likes women, right? And seemingly, Amy Jolly doesn't give a crap that he likes women. Even when she goes, I think the moment in the movie that really made me the most mad is, you're right, it's this cat and mouse game the whole time, even up until the end, right? I'm like, oh my God, there's like 7 minutes left in this movie, and she's ran through the caravan to get to him. Then she got driven there to see him. And then when she sees him, she still can't spill it, out. Hey, I want to be with you. Hey, I want you to, you know what I mean? Like, I think she was almost more vulnerable and more sharing of her feelings in the middle of the movie than she was at the end. And I think that would have been flopped. You might have had something where like two people trying to play it cool, don't really know how to get away from themselves, and finally at the end they come together. But like that doesn't happen.
Right.
So it's the moment though that really aggravated me the most is when he changes his mind for no reason at all, other than, okay, so all right, at this point in the movie, I'm thinking maybe he wants to do right by life, and then he'll come back to her as a self-made man who's proud of himself, right? But when she shows up to say goodbye to him, like she comes into frame. They're there for all of 2 seconds. They hit the music that it's time to leave, and like he just grabs his shit and goes. There's like no delayed look. There's like no somber sadness feeling between the two. It's just business, and he's gone. And it's just that part right there in the movie, that to me was like, okay, we're not headed anywhere.
Right. Yeah, and the word that keeps kind of coming up, like when I'm looking at reviews of this movie, is like it's dreamlike qualities, like almost like it's not a real place, it's some sort of dream, is kind of the theme that keeps coming up. But even that doesn't feel earned, right? Because it just, everything's too choppy, and like there's no, like, it doesn't feel surreal. Like it feels like a cop out to just say, well, this obviously isn't a real place. It's some sort of dream state where there's two people who are in love with each other and can't quite match up. And it's just, I don't know, I just can't wrap my head around like what works about this movie.
Is it possible that all right, I don't know too much about Gary Cooper's prior film or prior works of art up until this point, right? So it is touted that he's a star by this point. So is it possible that we just have a studio, we have a director who says the audience will buy the chemistry because they're two attractive people that everybody knows in real life, or at least, the celebrity of these people. So they'll just buy it, and we don't really have to write too much about it, because when we get to the end, people are going to be rooting for them to get together anyways. And that's just enough. Do you think that that's just what was said, or is they just think that, or were they not that self-aware?
No, it feels a lot like that, right? It feels like it feels like there's, it feels like there are three important players here, and what's happening is there's a narrative that's been told, and they fit into it. So this movie clearly fits into it, and maybe at its core it just doesn't. Maybe at its core it just doesn't work. And what we do sometimes is we try to justify things, and we pull very tiny, like we'll pull on a thread to see if it works, and even if it doesn't, it works just enough to kind of keep it in place. So it just feels like a stretch to me. And anything that tries to justify this as a good movie would feel like a stretch, I think.
Well, let's get into a couple things to note then, because I agree with you. 3.6 on Letterboxd, which goes to your point. Like, you're trying to figure out where people are liking this movie. And it actually has a 70% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, with an 83% critic rating. And I know both of mine will be lower than that, and I'm sure yours will be as well. It's just, what do you let's defend the movie for a second, okay?
Sure.
Through the reviews that you've read, what is it that you're seeing that is gravitating people towards this movie to write a positive review? Is it the nostalgia, and people are just kind of apprehensive to be critical of an older movie?
Mm.
Um, or is it there really something there that they're grabbing onto? What do you think they walk away with?
Well, there's definitely this theme of like desire being laid bare, right? Because you've got two characters that clearly desire each other, but aren't able to cross the threshold and actually admit it to each other or even really to themselves at all times. So there's like a little bit of a theme of like these two people can't quite mesh up even though they want to mesh up because of some other, like maybe she's too scared to fall in love with a legionnaire because she wants security. But even that feels like it doesn't work. And I that the desire and that the other thing that just keeps coming up is that the dreamlike quality. And I just, there are some times where you find a review that you're like, oh, that's the key word I was missing to understand this movie, and then you go back and watch it and it's like that keyword unlocks the movie for you. And it just doesn't seem like that exists here. And if that doesn't exist, then what we're doing feels more like a nostalgia, like a this movie is part of the narrative, like the historical narrative of film. So we need to watch it, and maybe we give it a little more reverence than it deserves.
Yeah. No, I think that's fair because I think that's what's happening here. Because there's movies that I really enjoy and I go to it, I'm like 3.1, 3.2, like, oh, 65% and Rotten. There was just a movie the other day. I can't remember what it was, but I was like, I can't believe that's only 65%. With this movie, the dream state thing, I'm just gonna push that to the side because I'm not sure I can grab onto that one,
Yeah.
because of the things that you've laid out. It's an interesting take though that I hadn't seen. Um, you know, just going off of this movie, it felt to me like yes, their desire is clear in the sense of like she's googly eyes, giving him googly eyes, and he's giving her googly eyes, but like the rich man is an attractive man. Gary Cooper is an attractive man. Um, but I don't know anything about either one of them
Yeah.
or even about Madame Amy or, Mademoiselle Amy, whatever her name
Jolly.
was, Jolly, to even know why she would gravitate towards,
Right.
so like for you to say the security thing, and I know that once you said it, you were like, nah, even that doesn't work because, in movies, a lot of times we're attracted initially to the shiny object on the screen, right? But it's
Yeah.
not until we learn their personality that we really learn of the true desires that each character has for each other, right? Because they're either opposites and they're exactly what they need, and usually they fight each other along the way to get there, or they're so similar that in the beginning they get together just to have it fall apart at the end, right? But like we
Yeah.
learn things about these characters as we go.
Right.
This is the ultimate disappointment of this movie because before we watched it, it felt like Morocco, during just brief research, was one of these epic movies, in cinema history, and I couldn't have not have been more let down.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, if we're looking for chemistry from 1930, we've watched two movies already that have way more chemistry and are way better uh, than this movie. I mean, City Girl and The Divorcee are both superior films to this. I don't understand. I keep saying that, but I just I don't get it on this one. That's the issue.
Yeah, and the other disappointment thing too is that this is our sixth and final film of 1930, so we're gonna have kind of a bitter taste in our mouth about the 1930
Yeah.
year, which we shouldn't because we had some really good films this year. Um,
Yeah.
but I think the biggest disappointment to me is outside of Charlie Chaplin. This was supposed to be like the introduction to the leading male that we really haven't had yet in a film. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean,
Mhm.
not that I can think of, and I was going over the list today. This is our now 19th film, believe it or not, that we've watched. And it just, we haven't had a leading male. So I'm thinking Gary Cooper is going to come in and we're going to get this now run off, this revolution, not revolution, but just this run of like great leading, performances, and it
Yeah.
just fell flat. So I guess I was just disappointed with the movie all the way overall. But
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I know what you're getting at with that leading man, like the Hollywood superstar, because we haven't seen it yet for men. And I mean, Charles Farrell's performance in City Girl was really good, but he's not like a superstar. He's not like Gary Cooper. So
Right. And he's, I guess you could argue that he's he's on the marquee as 1A and 1B. So I guess you could argue he's leading man there, but you're right. That's just where I'm at. I just, he's not Gary Cooper yet. We haven't had that megastar status that we're going to start getting here in the 30s.
right.
Okay. One other thing to note before we get into these scenes here is I did think it was interesting as it was taking place that Marlene Dietrich in her performance was wearing a tuxedo. I was like, oh, that's an interesting choice, right? And then she kissed the girl. I thought that was an interesting choice. And come to find out, both of those things for a 1930s audience was both over the top shocking to the audience when it took place. So, right away, and it happens in the first, 15 minutes of the movie.
Yeah.
So there probably is some tone setting there in 1930s that maybe you and I are just a little bit,
Sure.
not, we're not, we're overly, what's the word I'm looking for? We're desensitized to. Yeah, desensitized to in the year 2024. When you've seen Two Girls, One Cup, things just don't.
That's enough of that.
Things
Moving
just
on.
aren't. All right, things just aren't shocking anymore. I'll edit
This
that
is
out.
true.
Wait, let me start again. When you've seen Human Centipede, things just aren't shocking anymore.
This is true.
All right.
Oh Lord.
Anything you want to talk about before we hit these scenes?
No. I think we tapped on everything that I have for this one. So
Okay. I just want to say for our journey, the first scene I thought was interesting. And I'll read why. First scene of the movie, first shot. A man pulls on a leash of a donkey trying to get it to move, while soldiers are marching in the background, coming to the foreground. As they reach the street, they begin walking by bystanders looking on. Less than 60 seconds in, and we have our first set of breasts on the screen. Is this our first sense of nudity on screen thus far in our journey? Have we seen nudity on the screen yet?
yeah, man with a movie camera. There was the birth scene, and then
The
also their breastfeeding scene,
breastfeeding.
I
That's
believe in that. Yeah. So,
okay. That's correct. I completely overlooked that one. I thought that
but
thought that was
interesting is all three of those scenes, both from Man with a Movie Camera and this one, are all more like natural scenes. There's nothing egregious about it. It's more like this is a natural state of existence. Breastfeeding is natural and birth is natural, and then this scene is just she's just chilling.
and women in Morocco just sit naked. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
natural. I want to kind of talk about that for a second, though, if we can. It is natural. Totally agree with the setting of it being natural. Is it necessary to the movie? Like, to me, I wonder if, and maybe I'm overlooking into it a little bit, but like Gary Cooper is a womanizer, and there's no part of the movie that he's an apologist for that. Like, none of the guys are. As a matter of fact, there's multiple times where like Madame Amy Jolly is singing and men are just touching her, right? Or like Gary Cooper says, you ought to sit down now. You know what I mean? And like guides her down. Like, I just wonder if, again, overlooking, not really knowing, but if maybe Josef von Sternberg was like, hey, let's get a natural woman in here, even though it's not necessarily necessary to the film. It doesn't enhance the film. It doesn't increase the storyline. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. That I think there's probably you're onto something there. I also think and maybe we can get into it a little bit when we get into the cabaret scene. But there's something off about the way the women are treated in this movie. So
yeah, there is, and I wonder if we'll get there. Let's just keep going. We'll get there. Couple of other scenes. So Tom Brown catches the eye of a girl, to which he steals a piece of jewelry for her and flings it her way. They sign to each other that they're going to meet each other at 7 o'clock that night. The general interrupts and tells him to get in line, and that's where we get the infamous finger quote. I wrote this as an important scene early because you think it's an important scene because you're kind of getting like behaviors and mannerisms and kind of getting a little bit of like who Tom Brown is. He's a flirt. He's interested in pretty things, and he must be able to get them because they're interested in him as well. So much so that another aspect of this movie that is unnecessary is the Caesar's wife portion of this, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's really to set up a series of behaviors that Tom is going through. And now that we're kind of talking about it and walking through step by step, there might be a little bit here, right, with what von Sternberg is trying to say. Like the men of the Legionnaires, the French Legionnaire, are they're taking advantage of not just women. They're not just taking advantage of the Morocco. They're just, this is who they are. He could be saying something about their sensibilities, who they are as people. But it's so subtle that I'm not sure if he's actually trying to say it or not.
Usually, in order to give that type of credit, it feels like you would have caught other subtle genius moments throughout the film as well, right? Yeah. That allude to either the same similar theme or to something different, but like it's so noticeable. Even though it's subtle, it's still noticeable that we can pick up on it. Maybe as we talk through it, maybe we will pick up on more things. So let's just let it lay where it lies and see if we can see if we come back to it. Important scene number 3 I had, and this is just the introduction of Amy Jolly. A woman walks onto a pier awaiting a ship to take her to Morocco. She bumps into a man and spills her suitcase. This is where we meet Amy Jolly, and we meet Les Bessières. Is that how I pronounce it? Is that how we should do that? Bessières, Les Bessières. And the man helps her lead everything back or pick everything back up. He offers his assistance in Morocco. When she gets there, she declines her first objection to our rich man. But he gives her an address to be reached if needed anyway. She walks over to the balcony, rips it up, blows it in the water. Meanwhile, creepy rich man is sitting there watching her the whole time, goes and talks to the sheriff, yada, yada. This is where we get, I thought was an interesting, maybe this movie to me is I'm still interested in, because the police notes that a lot of people go to Morocco, but they don't come back, that they call them some sense of like suicide passengers because they never return home. I thought, okay, maybe we're going to get something here, right? Maybe we're going to get this, like, these broken people, or at least in her sense, right away we know she's kind of broken. We don't get that from Gary Cooper's character yet. But where are you at with this scene? It's the 5th scene of the movie, and it's the 3rd important scene, I think, in our story.
Yeah, no, I think still on board as we offboard the boat here. Nothing wrong yet, I don't think. Still, we're getting some of that weird pacing between. It's hard because the movie's pace is, I guess, fine. It's the pace in the actual scenes that is really strange. It's almost kind of that callback to old Arizona where we had issues like with the way the scenes just drug on. But other than that, so far so good.
And we're gonna get to it here in the next scene. It's the 7th scene of the movie. It's an important scene only for like the context, because it's where we get our two characters to, the meet cute. It's where they actually, come across each other's paths for the first time. But going back to what you were saying about pacing and just like, I guess the organic vibe of each scene, right? So, I think this movie attempts to be comical at times, but there's no timing. There's no, there's no pacing to the jokes. There's like no setup for us to you know what I mean? Like there's just, I think I laughed one time where I was like, oh, I think that was supposed to be funny, but like, I'm not sure. You know what I mean? So I'll give you an example. So we get to the club, the club owner, and he is like saying, "Hey, this could be a big moment for you. The crowd out there, they're not going to love you because the crowd is who they are. They're going to be rude and all this stuff. But this is a chance for you to win them over." Um, and then, and then we have this scene. So the owner of the place introduces Amy, and the crowd goes into a rude frenzy, showing her unkindness. She walks out, cool, calm, and unbothered, smoking a cigarette. Tom Brown, it seems, has caught. She has caught his eye, and he is now pretending to fight everyone in the crowd to tell them to shut up, and he claps alone. I'm like, okay, he cares for this, right away. So I'm still on board here. But as this scene kind of plays out a little bit, right? And we get to the apple selling part of it, and she's selling him an apple. Literally everybody in the club is like listening to their exchange. You know what I mean? And it's not just their exchange. It was her exchange with Caesar and the Caesar's wife and the rich man. It's like, the believability of these scenes too, just for me, where it was way off.
Yeah, it was like there was a studio crowd for a Big Bang Theory episode or something, laugh track going on too. It was this weirdest thing. This was so weird. And this is all the part that you're missing here that like is weird that Gary Cooper and everyone didn't just start shying away, was how bad of a singer she was.
Oh yeah.
Like it was just not a good performance either. So it's like I don't know. Yeah. The scene is where it starts to go, what are we watching here?
Yeah, because you think she's going to come on the screen and blow you away. Nah, she doesn't blow you away with the vocals. She doesn't blow you away with the dancing or the choreography. It almost makes you miss Bessie Love and Anita Page and our the Broadway melody. As bad as that choreography was, we were kind of almost wishing for something like that here. Yeah, I'm with you. It just this to me is like, okay, we get our meet cute. Yeah, we get this strange like. It's one thing for him to like guide her down, but like he's got to say something cute or like quirky. You can't just say you need to take a seat right here. Like, you know what I mean? Like, this felt like bad porn. It felt like, we were getting to a place where like, I'm supposed to like this guy. You're not doing any favors for your star.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it feels, it's interesting. I've been watching, I watched Sicario the other day. I don't know if you've seen Sicario or not. The Denis Villeneuve movie from, I think it was 2015.
I haven't, but I've wanted to. I just never have.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect movie. And I think it's perfect because Villeneuve, by the end of the movie, there's never any sort of claim about there being a good guy. Right? There is no good guy in this film. And that's important because, that's the moral of the story. Whereas here it's like, there is no good guy in this movie, but I can't tell if the director thinks there is. It's like, if Gary Cooper is supposed to be a shit, and by the end of the movie, we're supposed to say, hey, Gary Cooper is a shit. Like, then maybe I could get on board. But that's not how it feels, because we're supposed to be like Marlene. We're supposed to be following him into the desert. We're supposed to be giving ourselves to Gary Cooper, this incredible, incredible guy. And it's just not there. So I think that's where the movie starts to like fall apart at the seams.
And I think when you have... Yeah, because I think when you have these types of characters, right, when you have, and this is why I went back to like Mel Gibson and Harrison Ford especially, because I see a lot of Harrison Ford in this, where like if this was written for a Harrison Ford in the 90s, this movie would work, right? It might not be this big epic, but like it'd be, like, you ever seen the movie, I think it's 6 Days, 7 Nights, him and, like, he's an unlikable dude in that movie as far as like the reality in which all those characters live in. To us on screen, we think he's hilarious, right? But that's also because there's a fine line between creepy and like oddly like charming, right? He's charming in his rude ways, but he's not overly rude to a point where you don't root for him to like be redeemed in the end. You know what I mean? And I feel like with Gary Cooper's character, and this is where I take issue with Gary Cooper, or maybe it's just it was too early in his career. But like if you're a big star and you're reading a script, and again, maybe it just maybe performances weren't that important yet, Will. But to actors, maybe it was so new. We're talking early days Hollywood. The studio systems are starting to take over. Names now, instead of just like banking on directors, they're now starting to bank on names. And maybe that's just enough right now for these. Maybe they're just Hollywood movie stars. They're not actors yet. You know what I mean? And maybe I'm looking for Gary Cooper to be more of an actor where he would read a script like this and say, hey, look, I'm on board with this movie, but you got to give me more here because I don't like this guy. You know what I mean? And where do you think, let me ask you this because I'm rambling a little bit. Do you think actors had the clout to be able to say that during this time period? Or do you think it was too powerful of the studio and director combination that they were just lucky to have the job, be in the spotlight, and just go that way? Kind of like a Babylon, right? The movie Babylon.
No. Yep. No, I think we're still in, I don't think there's any actor power yet. I think it's pretty clear that it would be the studio's making decisions here, and it trickles down from there. And maybe there's a couple choices that Gary Cooper could have made if he had fought a little harder, but and again, I'm kind of speaking a little out of turn because I don't know 100% exactly the studio setup here at this time, but I do think that actors would not have as much power as enough power to change wholesale a movie like this. Like when you get to the 1980s and Kurt Russell is essentially directing what is the not Untouchables? What's the one that he did? Wyatt Earp.
Wyatt Earp.
Yeah. So in that movie, there's a director, but if you kind of read about that movie a little bit, he kind of does all the directing because he's Kurt Russell, and he can make some choices. But we're nowhere near that yet.
Interesting. Yeah, I think you're right. Because that's maybe I'll be a little more lenient on Gary because I guess when I was thinking of Gary Cooper, I'm thinking, oh, Gary Cooper, he's in that same realm as like the Paul Newmans of the world, right? And I got a feeling that maybe we don't get that type of performance from Gary until later in his career, right?
Yeah.
So
I think that's right. Let's
move on. I put this as an important scene. Again, nothing feels important in this movie, so like take everything with a grain of salt here. But like scene 11 of the movie, Caesar's wife sneaks down the quarters alley to entice Tom. Tom rejects her offer, and she is seemingly upset. Is all of this just to get Tom to go on a mission? Now, I felt like Tom and Caesar were going to go on like this secret, like two guys are going on this mission, but no, everybody's going on this damn mission. So it's not like Tom was going to skip out on this anyways. You know what I mean? So what was the point with is it simply just to say that everybody's attracted to Gary Cooper? Everybody wants him, that even Caesar's wife would want him too?
That could be a little bit of it. I think there might be a little bit of that, just reinforcing how much of a playboy this guy is. Like he's exiting, Amy's apartment, and within a minute is being bombarded by this, Caesar's wife. So I think there's probably some of that going on where it's like, look how irresistible this guy is. But I also think there's a little bit of like, set up for getting the tension between Caesar and him. Some of that is there too.
Yeah, they actually sandwiched it, if you remember. So Caesar's wife entices him.
That's right.
He says no, then goes into Amy's place, leaves Amy's place, and then she tries to entice him again. I initially thought that maybe they were using her because this is Caesar's wife. This is like, the number one that people would want to, be after. I almost felt like they were like using her to build credibility on Amy Jolly. Like, everybody wants this, but Amy Jolly is that one thing that, can kind of compete with her, or if not overshadow her. So maybe they did use that in the right way, but then we come back to it. And like you just said, it feels, I don't know. To me, it felt a little out of place, but you're right. It does lead to this tension between Caesar and Tom. Even though, in truth be told, what did Tom really do to Caesar's wife? I actually, of all the slimy things Tom's done, he was actually a gentleman. He told the woman no. He said, "I would, we're not going to do that to Caesar. We're not going to do that in this place." I mean,
Well, at least not right this second.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
Who knows if this is like the 5th time and he's finally saying no.
Good call on that. Good call on that. Yeah, good call on that. Okay. There's that. We move on. This is where now Tom, in a weird, again, just weird choices made. We get this random attack by these natives, and we get this weird fight scene. Again, this just wide shots. Like the more I think about this movie, Will, it just felt lazy as hell. I mean, you have a one-shot, wide shot of an attack from local natives onto Amy Jolly into Tom Brown, and instead of like getting close-ups of horror or terror or like, close-ups of the natives like pulling out a knife, it's just like they go off in the distance. There's a stabbing. It's just a lazy ass movie, dude. It's just Can we even? I don't even know what to do. I don't even know what to do here.
Well, I think the problem is we did spend a lot on the front kind of going through the film and some of the issues that we had with it, which is making this endeavor
redundant.
No, I think if you want to, I think we should talk about the last couple scenes because
Let's do that.
There is something there where we can at least try to glom onto something that makes a little bit of sense.
I'm with you. So you tell me where the movie, for lack of better words, picks up or maybe peak interest or redeemable scenes for you, and I'll do the same as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, really from that last, when she goes looking for Tom is when things start to make a little bit more sense, where you can start to feel like some of her desire coming out. You can start to feel like some of her, like what she really wants is Tom, even if the motivations don't make any sense because we haven't been given them. There's still, that's, I think, the power of movies is like, even though it's been shitty up to this point, you can still like feel drawn to her chase in those last 20 minutes. So from there, I think there's some redeeming qualities. I think the scene where Tom is sitting in the bar when Amy finds her is a really good scene. He's drawing her name into the table, and maybe there's some qualities there where it's like he thinks he's not a very good person and he doesn't think he deserves to be happy. And maybe some of his some of his history and some of his experiences in the French Legionnaires has caused him to believe he doesn't deserve to be happy. And he covers up her name, and then she finds it, and here we are at the end. There's something there, right? There's something where it's like, hey, I can see where this could have made a lot more sense if Tom found his feet and like actually admitted to her what he wanted and then walked away. We might be able to say, hey, he's going through it, but that's where it still doesn't quite work, is because we're to assume a lot about Tom in this scenario. I'm putting a lot onto the movie to make it make sense, and that's always an issue.
Yeah, again, early on, I told you the thing that I did like is that I felt like there was a story structure here that worked, right? Even in early scenes, I'm like, well, if this would have been, flushed out, or if we would have got a little exposition here, this scene where they first meet, or the first in the apartment, like the apartment scene when they first get to the apartment, that could have been such an epic scene, right? We get this kind of like, these two people that want to dive into something, but are still resolved because of like past experiences, and they give us a little bit of something, but they don't want to reveal too much because that makes them feel vulnerable and all these things, right? We've seen it. That's what, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, I guess we're just at the point in time where we don't know that phrase yet, right? We don't know what's broke or what's not. So we're not there yet. I'm with you. The engagement party on, okay? I will say I like everything from the engagement party on as far as the story structure. The scene that you were talking about, I do think works, but I think they're out of place. And that's the one in the diner where he's carving her name. I love how you laid it out. You know, he's not deserving of this. Things have changed him. The story does kind of go forward in time. You know, at one point, I think we're 3 weeks ahead. Maybe we're even further. So like we get a sense that time has gone by. But like, I want you to take 2 scenes, okay? And I think they would have, if they were flipped, it would have worked a little bit better. I'm totally on board with Gary or Tom and the final diner scene with the carving of the table, him feeling that way, right? Being a little more like off-putting. Come say goodbye to me tomorrow. You know what I mean? I'm okay with that. Fine with his character. I'm not okay with her traveling as far as she did on the dime and back of the rich man, right? This is the scene that's after her chasing through the caravan of soldiers trying to find. She's already told us that she wants him. She's ready to dive in. You know, she's already told the audience that she's ready for that. I think she was more emotionally vulnerable in the scene where she's got to go perform and they're convincing each other that he's going to desert and that he just has to wait for her, right? She tells him, please just wait for me. She tells him what she wants from him. I think if you flip it and you get more of that cat and mouse there where he will desert for her if she will just commit to him, you know what I mean? But she doesn't quite do it. So that is the thing that leads him to say, you know what, I've changed my mind. Even though they say they're going to do it, but like he didn't quite feel it. He says, you know what, I changed my mind. You know, I'm good luck with everything you're doing. I think if you flip those scenes, it works better and it's more impactful.
Yeah. No, I think you're onto something there for sure. Because there's the out of order thing is really important. And maybe it could be coming from our expectations a little bit. You were talking about that. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like there's a structure now that's well known. And we might be kind of pulling from that a little bit too much here, but I think you're right because it just feels like what we're really butting up against here is we want the characters to make sense and they just don't. And because everything feels out of order, everything feels just strange and not quite all the way there, we can't grab onto anything. And that's, you know, even in those little scenes where we do kind of grab onto things, it's not very hard, you know, it's fleeting. Yeah,
it is fleeting. And, you know, to kind of get to the end of this, you know, we're at the end of the podcast now, but to get to the end of this movie, there's a thing in wrestling, and I always talk about wrestling a little bit, but get out while you got them. Get out while you got them. And I felt like we've had enough cat and mouse throughout this movie. And again, it's only 90 minutes. Like, you would think, you know, we wouldn't be this exhausted, but we are. We had enough cat and mouse that when she gets and finds him at that table, right, she needs to spill her guts. And he can still be resolved, and we can still have the cat and mouse game, but there's got to be new information. There's got to be, you know, we're on this incline climb here. That makes everything believable from that moment on, like her committing to I forget the name of the line of the women that follow the men into the, you know, the ending that follow their men because they're so in love with them.
Just a caravan of some sort. And I can't remember what
the rich man gave it a name earlier, and it wasn't. Yeah, I think it was the rich man. He gave it a name earlier in the movie, but yeah. In order to make that make more sense, you know. So to me, the cat and mouse game really should have ended. In wrestling, sometimes they'll have this peak excitement. They did a big move. There was a kick out. You know, everybody thinks someone's going to win here, but they don't. And then bottom line is that there should have been a pin. Because sometimes they go about 5 minutes too long, and it changes the way you feel about the match. Because, the crowd came back down. they thought, they had a false finish here where their finish was didn't quite hit as much as it would have 5 minutes sooner. That's kind of how this movie felt like to me too. I almost wonder if we got this like ending 5 minutes sooner and didn't have so much cat and mouse, if it would have saved the movie a little bit. If we would have left going, you know what? Most of that movie wasn't very good, but like at the end they got me, because I really love the ending of her, instead of just like him staying back and them kissing each other off into the wind of the desert. I love the fact that he goes out and she goes in line. I love that. I thought that was a really good choice.
Yeah, no, and I think it could have worked a little bit better again if we just understood the characters, because like I as we've been talking this out, like it's starting to make a little bit more sense. Like this guy is broken and he doesn't know how to come back. So this is his life, and he's, it's the eternal return, right? This is same day over and over and over again, and he can't break that cycle. And she's chasing him down because she wants him to break the cycle so that they can be together. That makes sense, but we don't know enough about Tom to really, it doesn't, they don't earn that. And I'm not willing to give it to them because they
Yeah,
don't give us enough. They just don't give us enough along the way.
totally agree. Totally agree. And maybe this movie was never meant to be critically analyzed the way in which we are, but it got this aura throughout time that it's, one of the classics. And again, maybe if Josef von Sternberg was like, hey dude, it was a job, we made a hell of a living, I had a yacht, you know what I mean, like, and then, why are you critically analyzing that? Who cares? It was just a fun time at the movies. And if that's the case, hats off to you, buddy. It's just, for what we're doing on this show, it just didn't work. So, any final thoughts before we get to our big questions of, what was the director saying, themes, things of that nature? Do you have any final thoughts on any of that stuff?
Oh, you mean like what I think the themes are? I think I just kind of tackled what I think was maybe he was trying to go for. I think there might be a through line there between like the French Legionnaire soldier being awful and taking advantage of the territory and the people and not being able to come back from it. I think there's something there. I mean, I'm watching a show right now called Monsieur Spade. It's Clive Owens in it. It takes place in this kind of like same type of situation, Foreign Legion, and they're doing it the right way because they ask the question and they answer it. Here, it's just like, this is the theme I'm using, but it doesn't really matter because it doesn't matter, and that I think that's the biggest issue.
Totally agree. Totally agree. Nothing more need to be said there. Yeah.
Okay.
I have no hard-hitting questions.
Okay.
I have no memorable quotes, and there was not. There was one interesting camera shot that I came across, which I thought was kind of cool, but I also thought it was way too long. When the men are getting ready to go to Sahara, when we first learn about the caravan line of women who follow the men, the director has the cameraman. We do like a right to left pan of all the men kissing their women goodbye, right?
Mm-hmm.
As they're getting ready to go off into Sahara and have this next mission. I mean, that scene takes it's like 30 seconds of just like continuously seeing. So I'm thinking, okay, we're going to come to like, Tom by himself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, we don't. We come to Tom with like 3 women. It's just like, I was like, all right, well, that's my only interesting shot of the movie. And again, you disappointed me at the end. So, but.
Yep.
Did you have anything technically audio-wise or anything like that you thought? I mean, is this movie aesthetically pleasing to the eye, like they say in '92?
It's there's some interest. The shots in the final shot is really well done. The walking off into the desert, I thought that was pretty ingenious. The way that, they kind of let the scene unfold with the camera kind of in place. The scenes at night when he's sneaking in and out of her apartment, those are pretty cool. They're shot through like the greenery and the archways, and I thought those were kind of cool shots. But other than that, I don't really have much here. Yeah.
Let's ask the big five. Here we go.
Okay.
Should this movie have been drafted?
Probably not.
It's a hard question, right? Because you don't know what you don't know until you know,
Yeah.
And now we know. So, is this a rewatchable?
Absolutely not.
Any scenes in it that if it was on, you're like, oh, I got to watch this scene real quick?
Oh man, maybe if I'm a couple beers in and I want to laugh, I could watch the cabaret scene again with her singing and apparently seducing men.
I'm going to go with the first 60 seconds. You get to see a breast.
Oh,
Next
sure,
one.
Okay. Don't get to see those much, do we? In 2024.
Stupid. I was just being funny, but yeah, you're
I
funny.
know.
It's funny. All right. You know what? Let's just go to the last question, or the second to last question. We don't usually ask this question because we usually do like the movies in which we watch, but now I'm asking you to, what would be your why to watch? If you were explaining this to someone why they should watch it, what would be your why to watch?
Oh, man.
What's a positive thing that we can get from it? Because I know what my answer would be. My answer would be, if you were looking to remake a film that hasn't been remade, there's something here. We're talking a movie that's 97 years old, 96 years old, hasn't been remade, hasn't been touched. There's a story structure that I think works. If you can flesh out the characters, I think this movie you should watch and learn from it and make a better movie.
That's a really good one. I was just going to kind of go cheap answer here and say if you're trying to understand Gary Cooper and Marlene Dietrich and early Hollywood a little bit better, that would be the reason that you should watch it.
Fair enough.
That's kind of why we watched it.
That's what we did. So anybody out there in a parallel universe that's doing Cinema 100, here you go. Yep. Final question, Will, what would you rate this movie? You're going to upset Rotten Tomatoes and Letterboxd, I'm sure, but you go ahead. You're a generous rater. Give me a rating.
I am. I'm trying to think. I think my lowest rating so far has been 2.5 for Our Dancing Daughters, and this is worse than that. So I'm probably leaning in that 2 range. I think talking this out, after I watched the movie, I always tried to type up like 3 or 4 paragraphs for a review, and I was much. If I were to read that to you right now, it would probably be much more harsh than where I've actually gotten to. So I think I'll land on 2.
2. I think 2 is a fair assessment because let's set the barometer here real quick though.
Sure.
What is a 1.5?
A 1.5? Probably
What's a
something.
Something that just completely insults you as a viewer?
For the most part. I think anything Jennifer Lopez has made in the last 10 years.
Wait a minute. It's number 1 on Netflix right now. Her fighting an AI.
That doesn't mean anything. That means people clicked on it, bro. That doesn't mean anything about how good it is.
Oh, my God. Fair enough, too. I haven't seen a lot of her work in the last 10 years because, to be fair, though, I don't put her in a realm where, like, she's, a big actress. Like, she's a big name in Hollywood, or not just Hollywood, but like celebrity status, right? She's beautiful. Yeah. She's a singer, dancer, actress. She's been everywhere. But like, I think Selena was amazing. She was good in like those early 90s movies, like Anaconda and stuff like that. But like, what's her best movie outside of Selena?
Oh man, I don't. What was the Made in New York? Is that what that movie's called?
Made in Manhattan.
Made in Manhattan with Ray Fiennes.
Yeah,
I like that movie. I think she's pretty good in that movie. I haven't seen it in 20 years.
I don't think she's a bad actress. Yeah. I just think she doesn't care to make good movies. So,
Yeah.
but anyways, Will, that's 1930, buddy. We are moving on to 1931, and overall, without ranking our stuff, because we'll get to that, here in 5 more years. Where do you think we landed with 1930s class of movies? I more good than bad. Where do you think we landed?
I think we did pretty good. I think the first 3 that we watched were borderline excellent choices. Up through All Quiet on the Western Front. I think Hell's Angels had some stuff in it that was, I think, worth watching, and it was cool to see Howard Hughes' project that, much ballyhoo in the early 2000s from Martin Scorsese. And then the last couple, like Animal Crackers, pretty funny. I thought there was some good stuff there. And then this one, obviously, we've beat to death. So I think overall we did pretty good. I think there's a stinker here at the end that is making it hard to see the good.
Yeah, I'm not sure where I'm putting this one. It's either last or second to last. I really didn't like In Old Arizona. I can't stress enough how much I did not like that movie. But I do give that one more of a benefit of the doubt because they were trying new things, audio outside, that matters. A lot of, so that changes the way and that was 1928. So we're 2 years now removed from that. Morocco should have been a little bit more, educated on those things. So I think I would put this at dead last too. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm so kind of torn when I ask the question, like, should this be drafted? Because I do think it's good that we watch these movies and learn that it wasn't a good movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if we just drafted great movies all the time, we really wouldn't, we wouldn't have a kind of a wide range of, I guess, knowledge of what's good versus what's bad because, we're just hitting on all things.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about this one is we thought we were getting something that was, she was nominated for Best Actress. I think it was also nominated for cinematography, and I think
was Best Director.
I think so. Yeah,
I think he was Best Director again. Academy Awards. It'd be interesting. I've got some. We've got some people that we follow on Instagram that do Oscars retrospective. I'm gonna go back in their list and see, what their comments were on these classes because, I wonder if it's just so top heavy. Like we get a Norma Shear performance, and it's just so obvious that she's the champion because we're just not used to those types of performances yet. And then you get an entire generation of young girls and boys that see a Norma Shear, and you're like, oh, I want to do that. And then it kind of sparks greater acting, greater movies, greater craft, right?
Yeah. Yep. So, no, I think there's something there. I wonder how much, by the studio, for the studio, this kind of stuff was early on too. There's definitely some of that. We haven't fully shaken it. But I think that's probably a big issue here early on.
Yeah, I totally think you're right. And I don't think we're going to shake it for a while. So, next episode, my man, we will be talking the Oscars for the year 1930, our big 6 for that class, and then also the 1931 draft. So,
all right, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, buddy. For everybody out there, you know where to find us. Click, follow, like, subscribe on everything. Send us an email if you want. In the next episode, or the first episode of 1931, I'm going to be asking Will some cinema questions. I want you to get to know Will's taste a little bit, and then maybe he'll ask me some questions on the second episode. So we're going to get to know each other, your hosts, a little bit, and what their palate is for movies. So, Will, until next time.
All right. We'll see
everybody else keep watching movies. We'll see you.